Hi, I'm Warren Sprouse. This is the Bible Forum. We're here every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. We do it just for you. We want to help you understand more and more about the Bible and the way it's impacting our society. We have some sad news that came out this weekend. Some of you may know Dr. R.C. Sproul. He's been around a long time. He's 4 years older than I am. I didn't know that. I thought he was quite a bit older than me. But R.C. Sproul is an influential Christian leader in our country, in our world, founder of Ligonier Ministries. And we got reports over the weekend that he had gone on to be with the Lord on Thursday, December 14. The Ligonier Ministries issued a statement. It was very brief, very simple. Dr. Sproul had been hospitalized with a serious respiratory condition, as ChristianHeadlines.com had previously reported, and that last week Ligonier Ministries posted an update on his health, saying, quote, Dr. Sproul remains in a serious condition, his breathing being supported by a ventilator. He is currently sedated as the medical staff in ICU continues to monitor his health, even as they attempt a number of techniques to eliminate any infection. Underneath, you hear it underneath. There's nothing we can do. We're trying to make him as comfortable as possible. And Thursday, he succumbed to whatever it was that was pushing at his body. And the ministry simply reported that fact. Pray for that family and for the ministry as they go forward. Are you paying attention? How many politicians and popular personalities tell us they're Christians? I mean, there's a passel, as they say. How many are married, still married to the same person wherein they began? The person, they promised to love and to care for until death do us part. That number is very small. Currently, our vice president seems to be one of the few persons in the public eye who actually gets it. Everybody else, it seems, is what? Playing the game. There's a former Baptist pastor who is very popular in politics, in the public eye. He had his own television program at one point. He held a high office in his state, had a radio program as well as the TV, espousing all things decent, honorable. What if this man was using profane language? What would you think? Well, there used to be an old saying. The saying was, pretty is as pretty does. Well, that is true, but it's also true of professing holiness. It's true of the heart. If the heart is right, then right things will proceed from that heart. And make no mistake, that is the definition of a Bible Christian. You see, if a person is saved, God has moved into that heart. And his name, his identifier, his title is that of the holy God of the universe. And the Bible asks the question, can both bitter and sweet water flow from the same rock? And it begs the answer, no. Now I know it's not easy to overcome old habits. There was an old John Wayne movie one time where the old timer gave his philosophy, and It had to do with drinking a fifth of whiskey every day for the last 30 years. Oh no, he says, I've learned that you can't drink a fifth of whiskey every day for 30 years and not have cirrhosis of the liver, and you can't straighten up your fingernails by chewing on them. Those are things that he learned. Those are truisms. Those are things you cannot overcome, no matter what you do. But getting back to our pastor friend here, recently when confronted with a TV news person who was talking to him, asking him questions, getting his opinion and comments relative to his own daughter, what is it? The news person was being ugly in this interchange, and the Christian pastor, TV governor, whatever guy was getting a little short with her. It was wearing him down just a little bit, and he finally just responded by saying that people who have this attitude or think these terrible things of his daughter could just go pound sand somewhere for all I care. You know what he meant. It's like when we say son of a gun, oh, son of a gun. Or some people used to say, oh, cheese and crackers. Or maybe just a simple, oh, crap. All of these things are called veiled oaths. And the reality is, they are just as bad as if you had said what you were thinking. And all of that from a pure heart. Now I realize that habits are hard to break. Verbal habits are among them. But a man who has pastored for more than 2 decades, made money with his mouth for over 30 years. You'd think he could do better, wouldn't you? It's sad. The first 2020 presidential candidate has emerged. Guess what became the first issue? Well, this past week on MSNBC's Morning Joe, third-term Democrat-Republican John Delaney and former healthcare financier was asked to describe his position on late-term abortion. Peggy Noonan asked him, "Where are you on late-term abortion?" He answered by saying, "Personally, my wife and I would follow the teachings of our church. We're active Catholics. So the decision I make personally is different than the decision I think I should be applying to the citizens of this county." He's talking about his office where he is now. He's going to be a state representative, but currently he represents a county. He says it all depends on how you define it, however. The science is moving. Delaney said all of that before pivoting the conversation to explain why he thinks of himself as a different kind of Democrat. He then explained how he seeks to achieve progressive goals, but recognizes that market forces are positive and they do help the economy. Washington Examiner columnist Tim Carney, who described himself as a Maryland Catholic, then turned the discussion to abortion, saying, "I think your answer implies falsely that the Catholic Church just prescribes how you ought to believe on abortion. The Catholic Church in the Catechism, in papal documents, say clearly that abortion should be legal and that this is a clear teaching of the Catholic Church. Do you agree with that?" Carney asked. Well, Mr. Delaney said, "Well, listen, I love my church and I support my church, which doesn't mean I agree with every specific doctrine of my church. My church has evolved across time, just as all religions have. So Connie says, you're rejecting the Catholic Church's teaching on the legality of abortion? I think this whole debate is going to be very interesting with this new representative. A Middletown, Pennsylvania police officer has been suspended for attending church services during his shift. He's in uniform, he's wearing his weapon, his badge, he's working, and he's attending church while he's doing it. He's a 20-year veteran, and he's been in the habit of doing this all these 20 years. But Mike Hovind reported attending 2 church services at the Seven Sorrows of the Blessed Virgin Mary Catholic Church several months ago while he was on duty. The result is he's been given a 10-day suspension, which he's fighting, because he believes it is in violation of his religious freedom. Now, the real issue here is he got a new chief. He says previous police chiefs have always allowed him to occasionally attend church while on duty, due to changing shifts and his devout faith. Hovind also said that his church attendance has never caused him to neglect his work or to miss a call. The new chief, a fellow by the name of George Moshe, reportedly warned Hovind about his church attendance and ordered him to, quote, never conduct personal business on Middletown Police Department time, end of quote. Officer Hovind did not obey his chief's command. And he admits that he'd gone against the chief when the chief finally asked him what was going on. Now, in my view, there are 2 things at work here. One is the times are changing. People are doing different things. They believe differently. Culture is evolving. And secondly, I believe the Bible teaches us to obey those who have the authority over us, regardless of how devout we may be. Now, underlying all of this, Officer Hovind is a Roman Catholic. And in the Roman Catholic system, the only way to receive God's grace is through the sacraments. In this case, that of communion. Communion, wherein the literal body and blood of Christ, literal in that it is mystically, magically turned into that. There's the wine, there is the unleavened bread, and there is a word spoken and a bell tinkled and whatever, and these things, Catholics believe and teach, become literally the body and blood of Christ, which is then broken for you, sacrificed routinely for your sin. Non-Catholics, specifically Bible-believing Christians, rely on the original and only sacrifice of Christ for the remission of sin. The Bible promises God's grace to all who truly believe, whether they observe communion or not. But a Catholic must observe communion. Romans chapter 3, verse 24 says, we are justified freely by his grace through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus. Romans chapter 5, verse 2 says, by whom also we have access by faith into this grace, wherein we stand and rejoice in hope of the glory of God. But the Roman Catholic Church says, no, you need a priest to stand between you and God and do this for you. In the Catholic Catechism, paragraph 1324 says, quote, the Eucharist is the source and summit of the Christian life. The other sacraments, and indeed all ecclesiastical ministries and works of the apostolate, are bound up in the Eucharist and are oriented toward it. For in the Blessed Eucharist is contained the whole spiritual good of the church, namely, Christ himself. Now, non-Catholics simply go to church and they worship their God. Catholics go to Mass. Catholics go to receive God's grace through that priest by means of that Eucharist, that element, those elements. You see the difference that stands here? Now can you understand why this Roman Catholic police officer would risk his job, his career, the livelihood of his family to be in church? And can you see why so many truly Christian men and women can just simply take it or leave it? Makes you wonder which group has the greater, or at least the most, faith. We're winding up our year, 2017. Been an interesting year. When we get close to the change of the year, we'll look at some of the things that have happened. But for now, the Wall Street Journal is publishing an article looking at some of the things that occurred in 2017. The mass shooting in Las Vegas, which is the deadliest on record. A senseless shooting in a church in Texas, 26 people shot, most killed during church. In fact, the number of people killed or injured in mass incidents this year is the deadliest on record. Adding to that the natural disasters, the hurricanes, the tropical storms, the fires, the terrorist acts. 2017 was more deadly than the previous 3 years. More than 200 people died in hurricanes and tropical storms. Fires have killed 42 people, wiped out more than 8,400 houses and other structures, burned thousands of acres, and we still have 3 more weeks to go with fires raging in California. Racial strife continues to grow under the pressure of rallies and extremist rhetoric in groups. Gender distrust has also increased with the widespread revelations of sexual misconduct and abuse. It seems to have touched almost every level of society. And we're shocked. Are we? We should not be. If we are shocked because we are now seeing clearly these things. Knowing about them is one thing. Seeing them is a whole lot different. Every year, the information available to the world is increasing, and it's bombarding us, not just from our televisions, but our phones and all the other gadgets that we have, and that the list is growing. More and more people are aware, certainly more than ever before. Some are disconnecting from all of that technology because it's just too much. They can't handle it. Social, sexual crime and abuse used to go unnoticed, functioned under the radar, as they say, except by the police or your local pastor. But now we can't hide from it. But the Bible, this 2,000 plus year old document, 3,000 years old if you count the Old Testament, is on top of it. The Bible says in Daniel chapter 12, in the latter days many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. And Jesus said in Matthew chapter 24, many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled. For all these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. That means a multitude of different places. But all of these are simply the beginning of sorrows. At this time, they then will begin to deliver you up, speaking of the Jews at that time, to be afflicted, and shall kill you. And ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall arise and deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Did you see that? Because of the increase in iniquity, the love of many shall wax cold. When people just don't care about doing right, when there is no compelling reason to do right. Love for others is the first casualty. We're at the end of 2017, and as a culture here in these United States, the truth is, we just don't care about people anymore. You ever wonder why? Jesus told us. It's true.